Speaking Shakespeare's text. Shakespeare himself tells us how to do it. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Trippingly on the tongue. Precise, clear, meaningful. However, rather than speak the speech, I think what we have to be concerned about is also thinking the speech. Because of course the words come because of some inner thought, some inner feeling, some inner intention. And it is this which makes us speak. So rather than just saying words, we have to create before the words the feeling that will support the words. Understand always when you're speaking Shakespeare, or any text for that matter, what the words mean. Look it up in a glossary at the back of your edition of Shakespeare, or find one of the many books that gives explanations of Shakespeare's texts, lines and words. Find out what these words mean so you understand them. And when you're saying, how does this character say it? Never say that. Always say, how do I say it? Because you are the character. And always ask yourself all the W questions, i.e., why, when, what, where, to whom. Just repeat those after me. Why?
Why?
When?
When?
What?
What?
Where?
Where?
Where am I speaking? To whom?
To whom?
And of course your voice changes according to the person you're speaking to. If you're speaking to somebody who's near and dear to you, totally different from somebody who is alien to you. Let's just try that out. Will you turn to a person next to you and say, hello, how are you? As if they're a very good friend. Go.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you. And now say it as if you loathe their guts. Go.
Hello, how are you?
And now will you say it as if you're surprised to see them? You haven't seen them for ages. Go.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you very much. So, of course, everything changes according to who you're speaking to and the relationship and all that sort of thing. Well, this is obvious. But the next most important thing to remember is you have to have the instrument to speak the words. And the instrument is the voice, the most miraculous organ we have as actors. The body changes, but the voice will stay with you throughout your career. And it is vital to develop your speaking voice as players. There are many books on the subject, and I'm not going into it now. It would take far, far too long. But please, please have the discipline to do daily work on your voice. Articulation exercises, tone exercises, anything at all to develop this instrument. It has been said that the human voice is the organ of the soul, and indeed it is, because the sound of the voice expresses what is happening deep, deep in the body of the actor. So we have to speak these words, we have to project them, we have to make them clear. And George Bernard Shaw had a marvelous thing which should stick in our minds. It is this. He said this, not until his lips and tongue are as nimble as a pianist's fingers should he dare to think of standing on a stage and speak lines to an audience. So we have to have the discipline of the musician who does daily work on the piano, an hour or more. We have to have the daily discipline of the dancer who does daily class. As actors, I'm afraid we tend to be a little lazy and think all we have to do is learn the lines, go on and wow them. But no, we should set ourselves time for disciplined vocal work to provide us with the instrument to use to get these words over. But how do we get these words over? Well, first of all, we have to understand the disciplines involved in speaking Shakespeare, particularly Shakespeare's verse. We have to understand rhythm. You see, all the lines in Shakespeare are done in a very definite rhythm. And if we kill that rhythm, or if we change it, we lose half the effect, the power of the speech. Verse appeals to three sides of our nature. The emotional, it catches our hearts. The intellect, it grabs hold of our minds and also the physical, the beat, the rhythm of the life of the line. The next thing we have to think of is shaping lines, shaping verse. So it doesn't go all on at the same level, but it builds to a climax. The next thing, line endings. Don't ignore them in Shakespeare. Don't run the line on and make it prose. No, but mark those line endings by a suspensory pause, a suspensory lift. More of this later. Phrasing is the next thing. What do I mean? Sometimes in Shakespeare, one has to do an enormous amount on one breath. Maybe you have 5 or 6 lines. In order to get the sense over, the actor has to be able to do it. Tyrone Guthrie, who was one of the great theatre directors of this century, when any actor went to audition for him, the first thing he would ask them to do would be to read 8 lines of a sonnet on one breath. And if they couldn't do it, he wouldn't employ them. So there's something in this. Develop your breath support, please, so you can do this long phrasing. The next thing is focused feeling. We have to have such feeling behind those lines, such energy behind those lines, such fire behind those lines, that they leap to life. And this has to be focused. We must value words and sounds, the sounds within words. Any words, happy, sad, smooth, or anything like that. Just think of a word like that, which by its very sound, even if you were speaking in a foreign language, we would know what it meant. Think of one. Nicholas, can you give us one?
Soft.
Make it more so, go.
Soft.
And now Joseph.
Hateful.
Do it more again.
Hateful.
Well done, you use the lower register, which is great. What I mean is, you can say this, I hate you, or you can say, I hate you, and the lower is always stronger. You did it. Well done. Next, Amber.
Joy.
Thank you. Next, David.
Coarse.
Again.
Coarse.
Thank you. Next, please.
Cool.
Again, please.
Cool.
Thank you. That's the word all young people use nowadays. Well done. I'll do it in that way from now on. Next, please. That's awesome. That's another word. Next, please.
Evil.
Again.
Evil.
I don't believe you.
Evil.
Again, please. All right, leave it there. Thank you. Next one is Jennifer.
Lust.
Again, please.
Lust.
Still, it's a lovely word. That L, you can get your tongue around it and show your tongue, you know. It's wonderful, girl.
Lust.
Thank you very much. So let words and the sound within the words speak. Always speak in colour in Shakespeare, not in black and white. These are magnificent words, magnificent phrases. We need energised impetus behind everything. I keep mentioning energy, but that is the thing that actors need more than anything else. I don't mean leaping around all over the place. No, but inner energy. And the last thing is imagery. To see what you're talking about as you're saying it. To have a picture in your mind so that they, in their mind's eye, will see a picture. Well, this is all very well, but how on earth to do it? Well, I believe the key to speaking Shakespeare's lines lies in the speaking of the Shakespeare sonnet. And in those 14 lines of the sonnet, we can learn so much about all these things I've talked about. So, rather than use a sonnet, what we're going to use is a little rhyme I wrote many years ago. But just before that, just pick the paper up. I think you have it. It's marked A. A for sonnet. Work that one out. A sonnet, of course, is the most complex, detailed, intense of all verse forms and of verse speaking. I believe you can speak a sonnet well, you can speak anything in Shakespeare. I believe you can speak Shakespeare well, you can speak any author anywhere. You can speak Noel Coward, you can do Oscar Wilde, you can do Tennessee Williams, you can do anything. Because the disciplines in speaking the sonnet are inherent in all our acting skills. A sonnet has been called a moment's monument because it's only 14 lines. And yet within that 14 lines, an enormous feeling is communicated. But it's not just the feeling of a moment. It is as if this intense feeling within you has been building for a long time, and it suddenly comes rushing out in a moment of swift revelation. You know, sometimes you have a hatred against somebody and you say, I'm going to tell them exactly what I think one day, and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and then suddenly, pow, out it comes. It's the same with a sonnet. The feeling is intense. It demands powerful breath support and effortless breath control. It demands immaculate articulation. It demands precise mental and vocal variety. It demands a sense of speaking shape. It demands an appreciation of sound values. It demands the ability to colour words and all the other things we talked about. And above all, it demands a majestic force of feeling, the emotion which will support that sound. A sonnet should never be laboured. It's all very well, these people who do sonnets like this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art the one, and we go on like this. Well, it's all very well and nice, but in fact, the effect comes from the total sonnet, and it should be done as a continuous piece. It's almost like a horse race. John Masefield, who was the English poet laureate, said, speaking a sonnet is like taking part in a horse race. Once the horses get the off at the beginning, keep them running till they get to the finishing post. Don't stop in the middle for a glass of water. No, keep them running. A sonnet should not be spoken, though, without that build of inner force. And a sonnet is always directed to someone. It's usually a love poem, and it's directed for some purpose. You know, all this money we spend on Valentine's Day cards, all you need do is on a postcard write, Dear so-and-so, sonnet 24, love so-and-so. That's all you need to do. Well, Shakespeare's done it perfectly. Now, what is the strongest of all desires? Love. And you've got to know what it's like to love, to speak a sonnet. And you've got to know what it's like to love also to speak Shakespeare, to live life to the full. When I was a drama student, here we go, being an old man, I reflect stories. To remember my teacher at the drama school, Rose Bruford, a marvellous lady. One of the girls in my group stood up to say a sonnet, and Miss Bruford stopped her after the second line and said, right, stop, go out, fall in love, get your heart broken, then come out back and do the sonnet again. Next, please. And there's something in it. Unless you've been through it, it's very difficult to do. Love and all its agonies, all its ecstasies, love is heaven, love is hell, and so on. And in preparation for a sonnet, always mark your text. Well, that's enough of all the talk. Let's get on to it. Now, rather than use a sonnet to begin with for the structure, let us use a little rhyme I wrote some years ago. And this is in sonnet form. That is, the first thing, it has 5 beats in the line. Now, that's the first thing you have to get with a sonnet. As with Shakespeare, on a 5 beats, it's written in what's called iambic pentameter. And you will find, if you get the beats right in the line, on the right words, the words still make sense. So you can always tell whether you've got the right words, because if you only do those words, it makes sense. Will you look at the first line of this? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, I've underlined them. This metric pulse will make the sonnet live. Well, look at the second line. I've underlined, metric pulse make sonnet live. It makes sense. Whereas if I did this pulse will the live. It doesn't make sense. Do you get the idea? So you can always tell if you've got the right ones. So what we've got here is a poem which tells you how to speak a sonnet. First of all, you've got to get the 5 beats in the line. So will you do the first 4 lines? That's called a quatrain. And will you do them just getting the 5 beats? Now remember, it is like the pulse of blood through your veins. It's not a ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. That pulse is there, but we are only aware of it when we touch it. So really, we should only be aware of it when we think about it. So here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Ready? First 4 lines, go.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. This metric pulse will make the sonnet live. For soon you see the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less.
All right, now will you actually beat on your hand as you're doing it? So you're doing this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and let the words dance a bit more if you can. Remember, at a comma, don't drop your voice. Continue on the same level or let your voice lift upwards. It's an unfinished statement, so don't let it go. Again, please go. 1
and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, this metric pulse will make the sonnet live. For soon you see the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less.
So the first thing we have to get in our minds when speaking any Shakespeare verse is 5 beats in the line. There can be 4 and a silent beat. There can be 3 and 2 silent beats. There can be never, never, never be 6. So it is 5 or less. Now, the next thing we have to do is to change. And throughout Shakespeare, we have to constantly change our voice, our thought, from one thought to another. It mustn't continue on the same. And in a sonnet, we change after every 4 lines. It's as if we're building on the first 4 lines and putting the next story on and putting the next story on and so on. So will you pick it up on the 3rd line? For soon you see the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less. Then change your voice. At each quatrain, ready, try it. For soon, go.
For soon you see the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less.
Change build.
At each quatrain the poet's feeling builds.
Stop there. And now we come into another trap in Shakespeare, and that is when you do a change, always start on a different note from the one you've ended on. Don't use the same pitch note, but change it. It takes practice, but you can do it. So we go through the next quatrain, and will you notice, please, that there is a climax in each quatrain. Where does the climax line come? Is it the first line? Where? Anybody, any ideas? Amber?
The 4th line.
The 4th line, yes. So the climax of the first 4 lines, you're building up to emphasize important words. So can we go through the first quatrain? Will you build to the last line, that's your climax line, then will you change, and will you build to your next climax line? Are you ready? Go.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, this metric pulse will make the sonnet live. For soon you see the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less.
Change, build.
At each quatrain the poet's feeling builds, and so a vocal lift in speaking yields a greater inner force to listeners' ears. Get increased feeling, not just volume here, my dears.
Thank you very much. Get increased feeling, not just volume here, my dears. And the trap we fall into is when we think of increasing emotional power, all we do is get louder. No. Remember what I said to Joseph a moment ago? I hate you, that thing. It can be so often done with very little power, but it's emotional that builds. So we've got another change here, and the exercise sonnet tells us what we have to do. Ready? Another build. Go.
Another build the 3rd quatrain will show, so rhythm, increased feeling, and the flow of sound without an undue pause or wait will help the poet's intention recreate.
So in sonnets we have 3 groups of 4 lines, each with their own climax. Each quatrain, group of 4 lines, builds on the previous, builds in feeling, builds in emotion, until we get right to the end and we get the couplet. And the couplet is the most important part of all. That's the major climax. So, will you take it from, please? Another build. We're on the 3rd quatrain. Ready, go?
Another build the 3rd quatrain will show, so rhythm, increased feeling, and the flow of sound without an undue pause or wait will help the poet's intention recreate. And now the couplet, of all thoughts most strong, completes the sonnet, poet's majestic song.
Okay, well done. Now, I'm going to read it through, and will you simply mouth it? But go through this many times. It will teach you the 5 beats in the line, the iambic pentameter. It will teach you shaping. It will teach you rhythm. It will teach you build to climax. It will teach you changes. All those things we need when we're speaking Shakespeare. So will you mouth it as if my voice, heaven forbid, is coming out of your mouth? Always when you're preparing lines, mouth them. Don't just do them with your head. Get your mouth used to the taste of them within your mouth. Ready? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, this metric pulse will make the sonnet live. For soon, you see, the poet uses stress to emphasize important words, no less. At each quatrain, the poet's feeling builds, and so a vocal lift in speaking yields a greater inner force to listeners' ears. Get increased feeling, not just volume here, my dears. Another build the third quatrain will show, so rhythm, increased feeling, and the flow of sound without an undue pause or wait will help the poet's intention recreate. And now the couplet, of all thoughts most strong, completes the sonnet, poet's majestic song. And now let's relate it to a real sonnet. Sheet C. And we have this wonderful sonnet, 29, When in Disgrace with Fortune and Men's Eyes. I'm going to ask for a volunteer to do this, and I will help you through it. But you'll notice at the bottom of your page, I've divided it into the quatrains, and I put little notes at the side which will help you. So, who would like to try it? Thank you, Joseph. Right, do it sitting down if you will.
When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate.
Can I stop you there after the first quatrain? You're doing it well because you're getting the rhythm. I can feel the rhythm in it, and you're getting those 5 beats there well. But can you pay a little more attention to punctuation? What is there after the first word?
Comma.
So don't do it when in disgrace. Okay. When, suspend it, go.
When in disgrace with fortune
Okay,
in
it's
men's
too much, it's 2 notes more. Simply when in disgrace. So with any comma, throw it into the air as it were, and catch it on the next emphasis. Listen, when in disgrace. Do you get the idea? So you're throwing it up and you catch it at the exact moment. Go.
When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes.
Just a second. Will you make sure that your voice is not staccato, going like this? Above all, it must have flow. And through Shakespeare, we must aim to get flow of sound through the phrase, rather than word by word. Right? Again, please, go. When
in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate.
Well done. Now what we have to do is, of course, build the feeling. Because this is a poem of deep, deep, deep emotion. We've all been in this state where we pray to heaven and nothing will happen. Right? Will you try it once more, the first quatrain, then we'll have somebody doing the second quatrain. Ready, go.
When in disgrace...
No, comma, please. Shakespeare stayed up all night saying, should I put a comma in there? And he finally decided at 3:10 in the morning to put a comma. You're killing his work. Again, please.
When in disgrace...
Not when, go down, but when you're suspending it. Come again.
When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate.
Thank you. Would you continue, Amber, with the second quatrain, please? And there's a change, an obvious change here, but you wish you were like other people, and so on.
Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least.
Thank you. Whatever you do, don't declaim it, but just speak it quite quietly if you can, please, at the beginning. Then you can gradually build if you wish. Okay, and now focus the feeling on that, wishing you're like other people. And of course, you've got the balance in that third one, haven't you? Desiring this man's art and that man's scope, all the chances they've had and all the skills they have. And that dreadful last line of that second quatrain, you know, with what I most enjoy, contented least. And this is an awful state to be in. Right, again please, wishing me.
Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least.
You pay more attention to the commas at the end of each line, so you don't drop, but it is hope, featured like him, possessed, and so on, and you let it go right through to the end. Ready?
Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least.
Thank you. And then if you do all those lifts, but you've got to make sure they're different each time. If you do all those lifts, then you get the power of the last line. Thank you, David. Do the last quatrain.
Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising.
I don't believe you. I've got to believe you above all else. I know you're doing it technically, and we're working at it technically rather than dramatically, but bring everything in if you can. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. Again, please.
Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at the break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate.
Isn't that wonderful, that imagery, you know? Happily I think on thee, the loved one. And notice how the poet makes it sound almost like a bird is flying. Listen. And then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. And we get to the climax, that lovely last line. And then, Lauren, will you give me the couplet at the end? Go.
For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings.
Thank you. Which is the most important word, would you say, in the first line?
Love.
Yes, what else? What does love bring?
Wealth.
Thank you. Say the line again.
For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings.
Thank you. It's an idea before you do a sonnet to actually mark the words, you know, that you're going to emphasize, and just say those words by themselves. And you'll find they are evocative words. They create images, they create feelings, and so on. So let's look through it again. Now remember what we're doing. We're getting 5 beats in the line. We are building to a climax. We're not dropping at commas. We're trying to get a change after each quatrain, and we're trying to have a couplet at the end which sums everything up. If you can do a sonnet well, I think you can do any Shakespeare. Will you mouth it, please, as I say it? The theorist is on dangerous ground when it comes to demonstration, but we will try. When, in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. It's wonderful. It's not perfect. Heaven knows we are all learning. But do sonnets. A sonnet a day will make your Shakespeare play perfect and bright for every night. Now let's apply it. I just thought of that. Isn't that clever? Okay. Now let's apply it to a speech then from Shakespeare. And let's look at the beginning of Henry V. But first, as bottoms get sealed to ground, and bottoms are directly concerned, linked to brains, will you stand up and change positions and sit down again, please? Right. Air your seat and your brain will benefit. All these bits of sage advice. My old grandmother, for any problems in life, she would always give the same remedy, which was always keep your feet higher than your head. It was most peculiar, but never mind, you must try it sometime. Whatever happens, forget that. Let's go on, please. And will you look at sheet B? And this is the beginning, of course, of Henry V. Oh, for a muse of fire. Now, Nicholas, I'm going to ask you to stand up, get 5 beats in the line, mark the line endings, i.e. after that would ascend, lift it, and catch it on the next line. Let's see what you do. Go.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
Thank you. Will you do those 2 lines again, not dropping at fire, please? Oh, for a muse of fire. Come.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
Now change.
A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene.
Thank you. Now, if you had pens with you, I'll be saying, mark the changes, mark the stress words, mark your text. Do it again, Nicholas. You're doing very well.
From the beginning?
Yes, please. Princes, of course.
Princes.
Yes. Again, please.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene.
Thank you. Now, again, you're dropping on stage. Try not to. A kingdom for a stage. Think of it going for a shopping list. I'm going for milk, eggs, honey, grits, yuck, and fries. So you only go down at the end. So it's lift, lift, lift. Okay. Again, please.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene.
Now change.
Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment.
Thank you very much. Will you, Amber? No, we will have Jennifer. No, we'll have Amber. Thank you very much. It's my prerogative to change my mind. Okay. That's it. Now go on.
But pardon, gentles all, the flat unraised spirits that hath dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure may attest in little place a million. And let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work.
Thank you very much, and sit down. Well, we're only going that far, but there's an enormous amount in that. Let's look at it again. What are you doing? You're the prologue. You're the chorus, and you come in right at the beginning of the play, and you have the greatest story to tell of the greatest king that England ever had. When I first went to drama school, I used to do this speech all the time, and I thought I was brilliant at it. And I used to go like this. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a state. And I was going on like this wonderfully. Until one day a director said to me, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm greeting the audience. He said, no, what are you talking about? I said, well, I'm the chorus. He said, I know you're the chorus. What are you talking about? And he kept on at me. And then he said, look, you've got this story to tell of England's greatest king. What have you got to tell it with? You've got all these actors squabbling backstage about the number of lines they have. You've got this rabble of an audience. You've got this tiny theatre, this cockpit of a theatre. And we've got to do this magnificent story in that space. He said, do it again. And suddenly it clicked. And this happens with all Shakespeare. You're getting nowhere, and then suddenly it comes to you. And the speech sounds then like this. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars. And then they go on, but pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that hath dared on this unworthy scaffold. And so it goes on. And the thing begins to make sense. So, can I go back? And I'll do it. Ask Randall to do it now. And will you bring all those things in? So what are we getting, Randall? 5 beats in a line? That's it. All the changes, not dropping at commas. Stand a bit further back if you can. That's it. Not dropping at commas and getting the meaning of it. Now, you've got this great story to tell. You stride onto the stage. Actually, separate in the middle, like the Red Sea. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Separate. And Randall, I'm going to ask you to walk from the side, come down front, and bow to the audience as if you are the chorus, coming onto the stage of the Globe Theatre. Will you start from the side? Thank you very much. Now, you know how to walk with your galligaskins, you know. Not yet. Go back. Ready? Just stride on. That's all, and bow to the audience, and then greet them. Go. That's it. Bow. Thank you, and you begin.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
A muse of what?
A muse of fire that would ascend.
Start again, please. Start again. Go proper walk. Go.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon, gentles all.
Now that's where your change comes, I think, isn't it? But
yes.
Pardon, we've got none of this, we can't do it. So all we've got are these few actors. Yeah.
But pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that hath dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France?
No.
Or may we cram within this wooden or the very casks?
No, this wooden O.
This wooden O, the very casks that did affright the heir to Agincourt. Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure may attest in little place 1,000,000, and let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work.
Now that is a vital thing, that you're asking them something, aren't you? On your imaginary forces work, and then you enlarge on it.
Yes.
Okay?
And let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work.
Now tell them what to imagine.
Suppose, within the girdle of these walls are now confined 2 mighty monarchies, whose high, unprayed, and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts, into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance.
Well done, you're getting the right idea. It's the first time you've seen it, so as a first reading, you're doing very well. What we've got to do is always is what is being said, why is it being said, what am I trying to do, where are the changes, never go at the same level. There must be infinite variety all the time in Shakespeare. Just sit down a second and make imaginary puissance. Think, when we talk of horses, that you see them printing their proud hoofs in the receiving earth, for 'tis your thoughts which now must deck our kings, carry them here and there, jumping o'er times, turning the accomplishment of many hours, many years, into an hourglass. For the which supply, admit me, chorus, to this history, who, prologue-like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Shakespeare is one of the most exciting of all languages. The words themselves have magic in them. But what we've got to do is to search for that magic. It's like hidden treasure. We have to go into the lines, we have to get the 5 beats, we have to get the changes, we have to get all the other things. We haven't got to drop at commas. Remember, think of your voice as a bird in flight. When it meets a comma, it lands on a twig and goes off again. When it meets a semicolon, it lands on a branch and goes off again. When it meets a period, a full stop, it lands on the ground. Don't let your voice keep dropping on the ground. Let it fly on like a bird. But now, let's put it together. All this in a scene from a play. So, we're going to try and get character. We're going to pay attention to punctuation. We're going to get the 5 beats in the line. We're going to get all the changes, and this time we're going to get action-reaction as we play with another character. And we're going to look at a scene from The Taming of the Shrew. And Nicholas and Jennifer, you will be Petruchio, a real ladies' man, and you will be the shrew, a real handful. Are you ready? Thank you all very much. And go through that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 over and over and over again, if you can do, please. The more you do it, the better you become. In this scene from The Taming of the Shrew, we have the first meeting between Petruchio and Catherine. I'm going to let you just read it through first of all, play it through with as much meaning as you can, then we'll go back onto the scene. So see what you can get out of it.
I will attend her here, and woo her with some spirit when she comes. Say that she rail, why then I'll tell her plain she sings as sweetly as a nightingale. Say that she frown, I'll say she looks as clear as morning roses newly washed with the dew. Say she be mute, and will not speak a word, then I'll commend her volubility, and say she uttereth piercing eloquence. If she do bid me pack, I'll give her thanks, as though she bid me stay by her a week. If she deny to wed, I'll crave the day when I shall ask the banns, and when be married. But here she comes now, and now, Petruchio, speak. Good morn, Kate, for that's your name, I hear.
Well have you heard, but something hard of hearing. They call me Catherine that do speak of me.
You lie, in faith, for you are called plain Kate, and bonny Kate, and sometimes Kate the cursed. But Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for dainties are all Kates, and therefore, Kate, take this of me, Kate of my consolation, hearing thy mildness praised in every town, thy virtue spoke of, and thy beauty sounded, yet not so deeply as to thee belongs. Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife.
Moved? In good time, let him that moved you hither remove you hence. I knew you at the first, you were immovable.
Why? What's a movable?
A joint stool.
Thou hast hit it. Come, sit on me.
Thank you, stop there, well done, before the 5 minutes. Okay, well you read that very, very well indeed. Let's go through it and just get it a bit tighter, okay? First of all to the camera, right to the audience there. Right, just a bit louder if you can, please, a little more spirit.
All right.
All right, okay, now this is a speech full of alternatives. If she does this, I will do that. If she does that, then I will do. Which is the most important of that, what she does or what you do?
What I do?
I think so. Yeah, go on, try it, see what happens.
I will attend her here, and woo her with some spirit.
Just a small point. Unless you intend something by the emphasis of the word will, I would say, I don't think it's a particularly important
All right.
word. I will attend her here. I'll wait for her here.
Okay.
Right. Now we've got to decide, where are you? Well, let's imagine you're in a hallway or something like that. Because why does she come in? She's coming in to get to the other side, and she sees him sitting in there, waiting.
All right.
Okay. Right. Go. I will attend her here, because this is where she's sure to come.
I will attend her here, and woo her with some spirit when she comes.
Okay, now can you use that from your guts? People very often say, you know, it's a head part or a heart part or a guts part. I think Petruchio is a lot of guts.
Okay.
And woo her with some spirit. And all the ladies in the audience should go, ugh, like that, okay? Ready, ladies? Okay, again, please.
I will woo, I will attend her here, and woo her with some spirit when she comes.
That's it.
Say that she railed, why then, I'll tell her plain she sings as sweetly as nightingale.
Now, do you know what rail is?
Say that she rail, throw a fit.
Yes, throw a fit, I'll be very angry, or screech at you. I'll say she sings as sweetly. Right, again, play that bit, you're doing well. Come on.
Say that she rail.
Now get the difference.
Why then, I'll tell her she sings sweetly as a nightingale.
What else?
Say that she frown. I'll say she looks as clear as morning roses newly washed with dew. Say she be mute and will not speak a word. Then I'll commend her volubility, and say she uttereth piercing eloquence. If she do bid me pack, I'll give her thanks, as though she bid me stay by her for a week. If she deny to wed, I'll crave the day when I shall ask the banns, and when be married. But here she comes, and now, Petruchio, speak.
Right, sorry, before you come on, that's a list of things, isn't it? Which is the most important of all the lists?
The marriage.
I think so. So you're building to that.
Okay.
So can you build the second on the first? Exactly the same as a sonnet.
All right.
You build the first, second quatrain on the first, so build the second thing if she does this. Now, could you almost laugh it? It's very difficult to do, but we've got to have that. If she do this, then I'll do this. And don't let the thoughts be in your head before you get to them.
Okay.
Get the idea? A new thought. If she does this, if she does this, if she does that, if she does that.
All right.
And you will cope with anything. This, by heaven, you have handled women.
From the beginning?
Yes, please.
I will attend her here, and woo her with some spirit when she comes. Say that she rail. Why then, I'll tell her plain she sings as sweetly as a nightingale. Say that she frown. I'll say she looks as clear as morning roses newly washed with dew. Say she be mute, and will not speak a word. I'll say she uttereth piercing eloquence. If she do bid me pack, I'll give her thanks, as though she bid me stay for a week. If she deny me to wed, I'll crave the day when I shall ask the banns, and when be married. But here she comes, and now, Petruchio, speak. Good morn, Kate. For that's your name, I hear.
Thank you very much. What is after good morrow on your text?
Good morn, comma, Kate.
Will you play it? See what happens.
All right. Good morn, Kate.
No? Comma?
Good morn, Kate. For that's your name, I hear.
So what are you doing? You're emphasizing what?
Kate.
And what is Kate?
It is a nickname that displeases her.
A nickname, yes. And she doesn't like that nickname. Have you got a nickname? Well, you have Nick, of course.
Nick.
Yeah, of course. Have you got one? Jen? You like Jen, I know that. So we can't really go into that. But can you lower the sound of that name? Kate. And notice it's got a K, got an explosive. Can you use it?
Yes.
Good morrow, Kate. Hit her with it. Like that.
Right.
You're hitting her with words. Okay. Again, good morrow.
Good morn, Kate.
Don't pause as long. You make me. Okay. Good morrow, Kate.
All right.
Okay. Now she's got to react to that as soon as she sees it. So you can top it with, but that's your name, I hear. Top him.
All right.
Well, have you heard, you little... Okay, go.
Good morn, Kate.
No, hit her hard with it. You've got to hit her with it. You've got to hit her with it. Look, Nicholas, just put your paper down. Will you do this at the same time? Just
All right.
do it. Don't forget about her. Good morrow, Kate.
Good
Hit her.
morn, Kate.
I need a stronger punch.
Good morn, Kate.
That's it. Now do it, please, without the punch.
Good morn, Kate. For that's your name, I hear.
Why? Because the actress cannot possibly react unless you give it to her. If you just say, good morrow, Kate, Jennifer has nothing to work against. But if you really hit her hard, she can let the blood boil within her. Right? Again we go.
Good morn, Kate. For that's your name, I hear.
Well, have you heard?
That's it.
But something hard of hearing.
Now notice the alliteration. This is another thing in Shakespeare. He uses it for a purpose. Hard of hearing. Use those H's. Use them. Okay?
Well, have you heard? But something hard of hearing. They call me Catherine that do speak of me.
Now, Topper.
You lie, in faith, for you are called plain, Kate.
Does it come after lie?
Yes.
Okay, but what is happening is the thing that always happens at the beginning when people just pick up scripts. It gets laboured. Can you let the words dance?
Yes.
You lie, in faith, and then hit her again. Okay?
You lie, in faith, for you are called plain, Kate.
Okay, now what's it? Now he's already called you Kate once. Now he's calling you plain Kate. What would be your reaction?
Walk out.
Or get him?
Get him?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Or walk past him as you're going that way anyway, and he's going to stop you.
Okay.
So you can either get him, I would say not walk away from him, go where you're intending, he's not going to put you off from your journey, or literally go as if you're going to hit him or something like that, I don't know. It's up to you,
Okay.
right? Again, please come on, let the words dance, go.
You lie, in faith, for you are called plain, Kate, and bonny Kate.
That's it.
And
you see-
sometimes-
just a second. If you say plain Kate and she reacts in a rather an offensive way, you could then calm her down, couldn't you, by the next one?
All right.
Notice the first one is critical, plain Kate. The next one is complimentary. Okay, you've got to play it. And that means that she does something, you don't. And then you really hit her with the third one.
All right.
Ha-ha! And then you can chase around the chair or anything. Right? Go on.
You lie, in faith, for you are called plain Kate, and bonny Kate,
Get away from
and
her.
sometimes Kate the cursed, but Kate the prettiest Kate in Christendom, Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for dainties are all Kates.
Now notice how in this speech he keeps using that dread word the whole time. He keeps hitting her with it, even though there are compliments around it. You know, so you've got to keep hitting that. Kates are all Kates, and every time you hear it, just this man, who is he? Right, go on.
Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for dainties are all Kates, and therefore, Kate, take this of me, Kate of my consolation, hearing thy mildness praised in every town, thy virtues spoke of, thy beauty sounded, yet not so deeply as to thee
What do
belongs.
you mean by that line? Yeah,
The
not
beauty,
so
the
deep-
beauty is not,
Not so deeply as to thee belongs. What do you mean?
she's not as beautiful as is told of. No?
I think her reports have been minimal and the reality is maximum.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
She is far prettier and more beautiful than all the reports, yet not so deeply as to thee belongs.
All right.
You understand me? The photographs and the pictures, well, there aren't any photographs, are there? Never mind. Okay, go.
Yet not so deeply as to thee belongs. Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife.
Okay, just a second. Now you've got to hit her with it or she can't react. Myself, I'm moved to then hit her with the what you're going to do. Okay, and you're absolutely shocked, moved, oh, and so on. Play with it.
Myself am moved to woo thee
I don't
for...
believe you. I don't believe you're moved. I've got to believe you're moved. Come on. Moved in your heart.
Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife.
Moved? In good time. Let him that moved you hither remove you hence.
Now turn away from go away.
I knew you at the first, you were immovable.
Why, what's immovable?
A joint stool.
Grab her.
Thou hast hit it. Come, sit on it, please.
Okay, now play the scene again, but let the scene dance. Now remember when we did a sonnet. Okay, pay attention to punctuation. You're getting the 5 beats in the line, and that does work. If you make this scene prose, it does not work. Get the 5 beats in the line. Okay, the next thing is changes. Whenever there's a change, you've got to have a vocal change, a thought change. Whenever there's a thought change, your voice has to change. The meaning of words. Milk the meaning from every word you can. And build to climax, shape it just like a sonnet. Are you ready? From the beginning, and this time, bring another element to it, which is sheer enjoyment. There's nothing more delightful than a difficult woman. That's a lesson for life.
I will attend her here and woo her with some spirit when she comes. Say that she rail, why then I'll tell her plain she sings as sweetly as a nightingale. Say that she frown, I'll say she looks as clear as morning roses newly washed with the dew. Say she be mute, and will not speak a word. Then I'll commend her volubility, and say she uttereth piercing eloquence. If she do bid me pack, I'll give her thanks, as though she bid me stay with her for a week. If she deny me to wed, I'll crave the day when I shall ask the banns, and when be married. But here she comes, and now, Petruchio, speak. Good morn, Kate. For that is your name, I hear.
Well have you heard, but you are hard of hearing. They call me Catherine that do speak of me.
You lie in faith, for you are called plain Kate, and bonny Kate, and sometimes Kate the Cursed, but Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for dainties are all Kates, and therefore, Kate, take this of me, Kate of my consolation, here in thy mildness praised in every town, thy virtues spoke of, thy beauty sounded, yet not so deeply as to thee belongs. Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife.
Moved? In good time. Let him that moved you hither remove you hence. I knew you at the first, you were immovable.
Why, what's immovable?
A joint stool.
Thou hast hit it. Come sit on me.
Thank you very much. All right, give them a round of applause. Now, what we have to do, we go on working at the scene and the relationships and so on, we've got to make sure there is a variety of pace. And we keep going back to that sonnet, getting the changes, getting the rhythm of the lines. The more you do sonnets, the more the rhythm gets inside you. And that's why I say they're so valuable. But change is change. Whenever there's a change, there has to be not only the thought change, but the vocal change, getting it over to the audience and so on. And always, when you're acting, think not of your own part, but of the other person. What can I give her to help her react? What can I give him to help him say his next line? That is what acting's all about, being generous to the other actor. Well, that's just a bit. Someday we'll have to do the whole play, but that would take a 6-hour video, and we won't do that at the moment. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you both. Thank you. Well done. Those are just a few things to remember when preparing the text for speaking the lines. I use the word prepare advisedly, because as with all performing, the more preparation you do, the better the eventual performance. It was Napoleon who said, preparation is half the battle, but I believe it's 90% of the battle. The more you do beforehand, the better the performance. So let me sum up this session on speaking the text with a few points to remember. Some of these you've already heard this afternoon, and some of them may be new to you. The first thing is, when preparing any text, I would say write it out, type it out, with double space between the lines. Now, even if you've got a very big part, I would still say to the actor, type it out. It gets it into your head, believe it or not. But always have a text with double space between the lines. Why? So that you can write notes, you can make comments, you can put marks where there's a change of thought, you can put arrows going upwards when you've got to lift, things like that. Don't mind marking the text. The next thing always when preparing a text is to learn it. It is impossible to do any interpretation of any kind unless you know it. It is impossible to time it. It is impossible to do anything with it. And if half your mind is thinking, what are the next words I'm going to say? You can't possibly perform it. So learn it not by heart, but from the heart, which is a much, much deeper understanding. Those words must be part of you. Now, I know actors will say, well, I don't like to learn it till I've got the moves. I regard that as rather a rubbishy statement. It's a get out, you know, they can't be bothered to, that sort of thing. No, learn them. You can always change them later. Always prepare speeches by reading them aloud. Don't do them in silence. Don't just do it with your head in your hands, but say them aloud. Believe it or not, the sound of your voice going through your own ears will help you remember them more. So please, always aloud. And if you can't do it aloud, always mouth them. Get the mouth used to these new phrases, these new words, and so on. The next. Always, if you're in doubt as to which words to emphasize, always emphasize nouns. You can't go wrong. Nouns and verbs. Forget the others, but always gives names of people, names of places, anything else. Give them value. The next thing, in your text, mark every change of thought, every change of motivation. So you've planned it ahead. I have got to change somehow there. Vocally I've got to change, but inwardly I've got to change. We have to be mercurial in our thoughts as actors, not flat and dull, but our thoughts have to be like champagne bubbling along. The next, always clearly establish the emotional state of the character, the physical state of the character, the mental state of the character at this particular moment in the play. And always ask yourself, what has caused me to say these words? So with Petruchio, why is he talking to the audience at this particular moment? Why is he sharing these thoughts with us? What has happened? What is going to happen? And so on. And these W's. Never forget the W's. I would like every actor to have a W tattooed on their forehead, like that. Just remember why, when, where, which, who, why, the whole time. If there are words or phrases you don't understand, don't say I don't understand them. Check up, discover. Shakespeare's a treasure chest. Open it. And please, 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 apply just one of the points we've learnt in this lesson. If one of the points may be reading a sonnet a day, believe me, that will help you. If one of the points is, whatever it may be, just one to your next performance, and it will take it a step further towards that peak of perfection which none of us will ever reach, but by heaven we're striving for every minute in our craft as actors. Finally, joy in what you're doing. Never approach any acting, particularly Shakespeare, with a heavy heart, a dull spirit. Enjoy the privilege we have of speaking these magnificent words, speaking them, giving voice to this master of theatre, and reliving these words, making them live again for that audience as if it's the first time they've ever heard them. And finally, forget everything I've said. And when you're on stage, think only of the character, the situation, everything, and forget the technique. But by heaven, learn the technique first. Thank you all very much for your hard work in this session, and I look forward to working with you as we look at the restoration period. Thank you all very much indeed.